Great. Well, hi, Lydia. Hi, Penny. Great to see you and to have the
Hi.
chance to talk together. For those that might be watching, maybe we'll just do a quick introduction of who we are, maybe. So I'm Jane Drapkin. I'm studying for a PhD and I'm running Resilience Across Borders. I'll tell you a little bit about that more in a moment. Lydia?
Hi, I'm Lydia Stevens. I'm an executive coach. I was running a consultancy business called Triple Line that I worked in international development, and I met Jane actually during that piece of work in the Balkans. I'm now working all over the world but remotely, enjoying supporting others to achieve a better future.
Great. And Penny?
And I'm Penny Lawrence. I'm also an executive coach, and I'm a consultant, and I'm an applied researcher. And I have a background in international development too. I was Deputy Chief Exec at Oxfam until 2018. So the last couple of years, I've been doing different things.
Marvelous. So we've all got a background in international development. We're all qualified coaches, done coaching, done training, worked with people all over the world, currently sitting in our homes in extraordinary heat and about to explore a bit more about what we each do and how it all might connect with each other and with the world the way it is. So maybe, Penny, do you want to talk a bit more about what you're doing now and how you came to be doing it?
So I fell off a bit of a cliff really in 2018. I left Oxfam rather publicly and dramatically and unexpectedly. And it took me a while, having undergone, it was a trauma really. It took me a while to sort of find my feet again, but throughout the time I continued to coach people, and I decided to increase my coaching practice and develop it more. So I'm now just completing a diploma in coaching. And I have done bits of consultancy based on an initial piece of research that I did, where I was trying to capture my own learning around why was it so difficult to change very large, big bureaucratic organizations like Oxfam. And rather than comparing it to other smaller charities, I compared it to other big organizations. And there's a lot of learning there that I sort of gathered. And that got a bit of traction in the sector. And I did consultancy on the back of that around shifting and changing and business models and so on. I ended up convening the research that I'm currently convening, which is around why are there so few women chief execs, the sort of patriarchal systems that we have in all organizations, not just international development, but particularly in international development, just don't sort of, they really clash with who we think we are. So that's the current research that I'm doing, and yeah, how I got there. What about you, Lydia? How did you're also an executive coach, I know, and that's how we connected, but yes. How did you end up giving up Triple Line?
Well, we were a UK-based consultancy working in international work, mainly for the British government, Department for International Development. And we felt we needed to be Southern-owned and Southern-based as an organisation for the world of the future. And actually, the journey really was to partner with an organisation called IPE Global. And they bought us, and my partner David and I, we had 3-year contracts to transition the business from the UK to a truly global organisation. So we did that, and actually the journey was quite difficult because of the cultural differences and also the scale of the staff we had, from about 30 to over 500. And it was a journey and very exciting. But having been at the board level in the global organisation and running a business as a director in the UK, I felt I couldn't continue. I didn't have anywhere to go from there. And I stopped for a year and took a gap year, essentially. And then I decided that coaching would give back what I learned. And female leadership, funny enough, Penny, building on what you said, and use of feminine energy is something that I'm really exploring in different models of leadership. So that's where I'm at now, and I'm very much enjoying it. So yeah, let's hear from you, Jane.
Thank you. Well, so like you two, it's a sort of journey of circumstances and events, and I spent many years working in humanitarian aid and international development, particularly conflict affected countries, and working with communities to rebuild after conflict, and was all set to continue doing that when my back had other ideas, and I actually couldn't travel for a number of years, needed back surgery and things. So I moved into leadership development and coaching and training around resilience and stress management. And this was a way to get myself back on track. So I set up a company called Back on Track Coaching. I worked for a consultancy for a couple of years and then set up on my own after my second more serious back operation, when I really couldn't move and I couldn't travel. So I worked from home and thought, very similar to you two, that I've learned a lot and now I want to share it with people. I kind of know how you get through these big shocks in your life. So let me share that with other people, and let me try and help other people not get to the burnt out, sort of lying flat on your back, unable to move state that I'd got myself into. So I had an amazing time learning about all sorts of bits of behavior change and psychology, and how groups work and how leadership works, and different diagnostic tools and all sorts of things, and had a lovely time doing that, coaching and training and working with organizations ranging from international development charities, the INGOs, through to big corporates, and working with individuals and with Sierra Leonean staff of an international NGO out in Sierra Leone. So a complete mixture. And having done that for a number of years, I wanted to build on that and share it more widely. So I thought, oh, I'll go back into the NGO sector, into the charity sector. And I did that for a while, but at the back of my mind, I had this little idea. And the idea was that everything that I'd been involved in overseas, and everything that I'd been involved in working with in the UK on the leadership development side, so all the coaching and training and all the post-conflict community work, alongside some work that I've been doing for a number of years on genocide education work, I thought these all knit together somehow, these all connect. And it took me a long time to be able to articulate it. But what it was I just thought, there's different things going on in these different streams, and they can all learn from each other. And we're all, ultimately, all of these streams are trying to help people to live better, whether it's to stop violence, stop genocide, or perform better. Everybody's trying to do things better. So let's all learn from each other. And in particular, and the genocide work, we use a lot of storytelling about victims, and we know a lot about people that survived, and we know a lot about people that did the killing. But there's a whole bunch of other stakeholders in there who are people that prevented the killing. And in leadership development work, we focus on what works well. We focus on what good leaders do and how good organizations function, and we learn from that. And so I thought, well, why don't we take that learning into the conflict setting? And so what I'm doing is I'm studying why some communities don't descend into violence when around them there is violence, particularly identity-based violence. Why don't people kill each other when all the odds are that they should, and everyone around them is, but they're not? What can we learn from them, and how can we share that learning into other communities and into organizations? And also, what can those communities learn from how organizations function? So that's why I'm doing a PhD, to study it, to do the research. And that's why I set up Resilience Across Borders, to learn, to share that learning.
Oh, fantastic, Jane.
So
have you got particular study countries then, Jane? Are you looking, give us a couple of examples of communities where you think they've done amazingly at not descending into conflict?
Yeah, so there are actually a lot out there, and the reason Lydia and I reconnected was because I ran a webinar a couple of weeks ago on the city of Tuzla in Bosnia.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah.
And Tuzla was the only place in Bosnia that managed to prevent ethnic cleansing, and it wasn't that there wasn't tension. There was huge tension, but they managed to maintain this peacefulness, this harmony. And there are communities right back from the Holocaust, where there's obviously a huge amount of research done on all aspects of it, right up to Syria. There are communities in Syria, there are communities in Baghdad, there's communities in Afghanistan, there's communities in Colombia, communities in Nigeria, community in DRC, where little pockets of research have been done and these communities have been found. And there are consistencies across how those communities operate. So that's sort of what I've been doing. But I'm interested to hear more about, so for you, Penny, you're saying you've been doing research into comparing Oxfam with some other organisations. I'm just wondering if you want to share a bit about what you've been finding.
So yes, the first piece of research I did, so this is a couple of years ago really, but was both capturing my own learning, but then I sort of developed it with semi-structured interviews with other chief execs and so on, and linked up with Birmingham University, the Third Sector Research Centre there, on, it was called Wither INGOs, question mark. And I suppose it was asking why it is so difficult to change big INGOs. And my background is I've come through the program side really, being a volunteer and then a country director and so on, living overseas on both the humanitarian and long-term development front, and was the programs director for many years in Oxfam. But I've always had an interest in the organisational development side and trying to be the change you seek. It's really important to me that you don't pontificate about things about inequality, but you actually sort that out within your own organisation type thing. So I did that piece of research, which again, my whole approach is to say, well, okay, it is really difficult to bring about change in large NGOs. Everybody knows that. But why is that? And what can you do? Where are there creative solutions? And I never had the opportunity at Oxfam, and I've had the time really, or the brain space, I suppose, to look outside at other sectors. So I did link up with likes of IKEA and Unilever, but I was sitting on their sustainability boards and, helping with other people to make sure that they had supply chains that took into account, the poor people at the very end of the supply chain were getting a fairer deal, but not to look at them as organizations, if you see what I mean. And in doing that, I learned a huge amount about how they had managed change and so on, and tried to share that with other INGOs. And I think that's what people found useful, was not just saying, you've got a problem, INGOs, your inability to change in this case, but actually trying to seek out other solutions. But I was also been over recent times, obviously, we've all got a background in sort of crisis management as well. And the combination, I think, of the background in crisis leadership, and I think having been through personal trauma ourselves, which we all share, meant that in my coaching practice in COVID times, people were really keen to talk about how you as a leader respond in a crisis and how you develop resilience, but what you need to do in the early stages, how you sort of manage the uncertainty of it all, etc., etc. And through that coaching practice, I've been doing a number of webinars on just the sort of basics of crisis leadership and what it looks like at the different stages, but also trying to pull out and extract some of the learning. And in that way, I've also, again, reached outside our sector. And I've found, this is coming back to your point around communities, and why some communities do so much better than others, but the community resilience in the UK is really interesting, and it's been really starkly seen, I think, in COVID times, where some communities have done phenomenally well, both to look after themselves and make sure that they do everything they can to prevent COVID and what have you. And those communities are now saying, well, we managed to do that. What else can we do? And in Devon, for example, really interesting, but they've taken on the county council and said, actually, we think the economic plan for Devon is completely up the creek. You need to build the community up. And we've got some ideas on how you can do that. And they've got such interesting conversations around how you develop an economic model where you meet the social flaw within the planetary boundaries, what that sort of more circular economy, if you like, actually looks like in a regional development plan. And then, other communities struggle a bit more. But so I think it's, that that's what twigged for me, or sort of chimed for me in what you said around the current times we're living in. And
Amazing.
I know, Lydia, you've been thinking more on the environmental side, haven't you, around that side. Just tell us a bit more about what COVID has done, if you like, in terms of your thinking. And
so during COVID, actually, we ran webinars. I joined forces with Catherine Andrews, another coach, and we helped people explore what they were feeling, anxiety versus opportunity, and positive energy to, it was called Connect with Something Bigger. So the planet basically being one of the connections with something bigger, to hold the space that we were feeling as COVID hit. Obviously the trauma around the health crisis, but also the opportunity for the planet was the slowing down, the inner being and being present in the moment, rather than whatever the exponential growth model was giving us before. We were thinking maybe this is a call from the planet itself to say stop. So I just enjoyed that time, but also coming out of lockdown, as you said, Penny, I mean, it's very hopeful thinking that some communities have got a lot stronger during COVID. I think where I'm living in Southfields, we've had a very good local support, but whether that translates to further action, I don't know. Linking to government, absolutely, and to companies. And that's my work now, is actually with a purpose of impact, positive impact on the world around us, both peace, equity, and planet and climate and ecology. So I'm trying to be quite explicit about that in the way I'm coaching and what I'm doing, and using a systems approach. Appreciate everything's connected and everyone is connected. So actually connecting to you is fantastic, because we're stronger if we form these links and learn from each other, not just here in the UK, but globally. So all of us have that kind of global awareness, which is really needed at this time, I think.
I think the thing that, COVID was difficult, but I don't know about you, but I found the whole Black Lives Matter I found that so difficult. And I don't know whether I was just in that sort of exhausted state from COVID and then, but I suppose over our lifetime, I've always thought that things were getting better in terms of equality. And the sudden realization that, COVID had exposed inequality, but the whole race inequality, as well as the economic and the climate inequality, it just felt totally overwhelming. And of course, I mean, the truth is, all of those traits were there before. I think it's just been exacerbated or exposed more actually at the moment in all our sort of weirdness. And I think that's what I want to connect to. This, you've got the COVID, the Black Lives Matter, the economic downturn, the climate justice, all of which exacerbate inequality in a way that is taking it in the wrong direction, that I want to connect to. So like you, Lydia, coaching people is fantastic individually, but for me it needs to connect to something bigger, and it's that sense of, how do you enable those that are doing something, those communities in Devon, shining a light on that and enabling them to use the energy that they've got from really difficult times to actually do something really creative with that moving forwards. And I share your worry, I don't know about you, Jane, about will it just fall away? Will the energy that those young Black activists have got, just dissipate? What can we do to, help people use it as a force for good, as a force for change?
That sort of build back better, let's use this opportunity, let's be transformational. And I think it's really interesting if you've listed the key issues of our time. We anything to do with the climate and the ecosystem in which we live, and COVID and health and the economy and Black Lives Matter and institutional structural inequalities that we've been facing. And yeah, in amongst all of this, some people in a lot of places have grasped this and taken control. And for me, that's one of the really interesting things that I've been finding in my research is the concept of civilian agency, that there's this enormous threat descending from the outside, which is completely beyond our control. And we know as coaches, fundamental part of coaching is you can't control what's going on around you, but you can control your response to it. And that for me is where the learning from some of these communities is so valuable. And it'd be great to learn more about that, what's happening in Devon, because these provide the role models, these provide the positive examples to aspire to do. And what's beautiful about these examples is there may well be one or two heroic characters who just, stand up and can do all sorts of amazing things. But for most of us, that's too far away. I can't do this. I've got this much space in my life to do something good. So how am I going to do that? And actually, it's this intricate connections and balances and continual adjustments and assessment of what's going on and evaluating new information and talking to people and listening to people and having groups that work together, having individuals that work together, having leadership, having structures to disseminate information to make things happen. It's all of those things. And on the one hand that can feel overwhelming, but I think on the other hand, particularly if we're in this kind of coaching and training and exposing positive stories space, it's about giving people just examples of actual concrete things that they can do that are within their sphere of influence. And as we all know, when you start to do that, suddenly you realize you actually have a lot more influence than you ever thought you had. And that's where, Lydia, your thing about women's energy and empowerment, I think, is really exciting, because women are, in all of the stories that I've read, women are very rarely talked about. So I think, using what you're doing to really tap into that, what you're doing, Penny, about women leadership in NGOs is just so needed and so fabulous. So I guess my question to you both is, where are you going next with this? What are your next steps?
So for me, I don't know, and I'm comfortable in not knowing, and that's new for me. The world is very emergent, it's very uncertain, and like you, Jane, I think those connections are really important, and you need to be confident in your own sense of identity and community and purpose and contribution. So the work that I'm doing in convening this action research is trying to say, well, yes, you need more women leaders, because 30% of charities are led by, as chief execs, led by women, but 70% of staff are women. What the hell's going on there is a lot more complicated to answer. So it's a simple question, but it's a very complicated answer. And the primary answer is organizations are set up in a very patriarchal way, a macho way, and it doesn't suit a lot of women. But the women that do get there sometimes think they need to act in that macho way in order to survive. The early people, if you like, the early sort of successes. And now it's shifting and changing. There is a lot of energy around feminist leadership, and a lot of energy in saying, actually, we do need to find reward systems that reward collaboration and networking, and not just end results, because the end results matter, of course they do, but so does the method in which you got there, and the whole organizational sustainability depends on both, not just the end results. So I feel on the one hand quite excited about the opportunity now that COVID has offered, where you can see the leaders that were really good and capable, the Jacinda Ardern's, all the Finns, the Swedes, the Scandinavians and so on, and South Korea, who managed to combine being strong and being kind. And I think that's the trick, is people think feminist leadership is all about the soft stuff. No, it is not. It's about holding those two things in tension, being strong, being decisive, being clear, and being kind and compassionate. And women seem to have a capability to do that a lot better than a lot of men, not all men, but a lot of men. So I think that's where I'm generally headed, and trying to connect up my coaching to that sense of inequality on gender that now needs to take into account the fact that, you know, we don't even know the numbers of women of colour who are chief execs, but it's very, very low in our sector. So I'm trying to not just sort of subsume that agenda, but actually link to those in Charity So White and in Bond that are doing work on women leaders of colour as well. So that's where I'm vaguely headed.
Exciting times. Lydia, how about you?
Yeah, well, Penny, I mean, I echo so much of that. And I really feel there is a new emergent energy around collaboration, around compassion. And I don't know where it's come from or whether it was always there, and I've just become aware of it now that I'm in the coaching profession. And I think it's showing that it can be done with, you know, leadership role models, networking and collaboration to those people, so that the types of new models of leadership are stronger because their voices are heard more comfortably in maybe webinars like this or other forum where you're not seen as being the only ones, and therefore the strength and the confidence to come out and essentially come out with your whole self and to be yourself and to not have this artificial break between your work and who you are as a person. I think that's one of the main coaching and coachable mindset shifts. But in where I'm heading with my coaching business, I think I will focus much more on what the planet needs in terms of the climate and ecological crisis, people working on that and who are wanting support. That's who I'm targeting, plus female leaders who are maybe handing over their business, maybe looking for a bit of letting go of their baby, which is what I did. And forming collaborative groups. I mean, I'm a connector naturally, love networking, and I know not everyone does, so I'm happy to do more of that. In terms of other alliances, I just want to mention the Climate Coaching Alliance, which I'm a member, and I'm helping to organise some event, 24 hours around the world in different time zones on the 1st of October. So watch this space.
Great. Well, definitely keep us posted on that, Lydia. Thank you. And yeah, I mean, it's almost like there's such a wealth of opportunity at the moment in terms of there are so many ways and places where what we're all doing, we can see could have benefit, and I think we all want to share it as much as possible. And then it's like, okay, so actually, you know, what is my first step? How am I going to get to do that more? And for me, it's always this continual balance between doing more research to find out more information, really dig down into really what's going on so that I can share that, and just wanting to shout from the rooftops and say, listen, this is going on, and these voices deserve to be heard. And I think that's one of the things that's really come out certainly in England, and certainly in the news that we were listening to during COVID pandemic, during Black Lives Matter, is that actually there's a whole plethora of voices, and everybody's voice needs to be heard, because the problems might be global or they might be institutional, but the experiences are very, very, very personal. And we need to connect those huge agendas with actually how they really impact on people's lives.
So true. That's so true, Jane.
I think we've always known that, but now we've got a chance to do something with that. And I think between us, we can do great things. So
lovely.
Let's keep talking.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Right.